Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Solution Podcast. It's the solution. Yes, yes. It's the solution, ladies and gentlemen. We are here for the truth. That's what we are here for. It's the Solution Podcast. Let's get to the solution. Let's work out these problems. Let's get to it. Let's tell them the truth. Let's stop the lies.
Let's give them the evidence.
The Solution Podcast. We got you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you stay tuned. I hope, comment. Hold on. Let me say that again. I hope you comment, like, and subscribe. We've got you. We're gonna tell you the truth. We're not gonna lie. And don't forget, ladies and gents, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
And we are live. Is Islam racist? I'm here with JM. We have a PowerPoint, or my brother JM has a PowerPoint. I wish we were just talking to Hassan. I wish Hassan, I hope Hassan join us for this live. We're going to be talking about, is Islam racist? And brother JM here is going to take us through this PowerPoint. I also have, a bunch of evidence on my side to prove my case. But I've also invited Brother Fishes as well, the Fishes channel. Shout out to him. I've also invited him. And I'm going to put the link in the chat, guys, for anyone who wants to join us, who disagrees with us, because we believe in being fair here. And you can come in and, prove your point. Is Islam racist? My brother Jam, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, bro. I'm doing very well.
I can't complain either. So, what's your opinion? Is Islam racist?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I think there's a couple of what I would call elephant in the room when it comes to Islam. I've been to Speaker's Corner, and the first topic is obviously what we discussed a while back. I don't know if you've ever got to go into it now.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first elephant in the room. And I think the second one is this alleged racism within Islam. And I think I've seen many people, I've seen God Logic bring it up. I've seen a lot of people who, it's like there's a hat that this hat if you're going to debate a Muslim, there's this little hat that you can have. And inside that hat are two topics that people pull out whenever they feel they want to hit a devastating blow. The first is the one we discussed a while back, and the second one I think is this. And growing up, I've heard prominent Muslims talk about this issue. Ones that have not, maybe that have diverted to other forms of Islam. I remember growing up and hearing people like Malcolm X, and I've heard people like Khalid Muhammad, and I've heard people like Farrakhan. I mean, I'm not a Nation of Islam person, but I just remember hearing them talk about, when I was interested in these topics, they did mention racism within Islam, particularly in Muslim lands. And so I always thought, that's interesting. But then I was also confused because I understand that some of the prominent people like Bilal and other people were black. So I thought, and then through our discussions, there's things that you've said I wasn't aware of. So yeah, I thought, this is time to maybe dive a bit into it and see what conclusions we can come up to.
Now, me personally, because I don't like to misrepresent anyone, I think we have a standard by which we make this decision or come to this conclusion as to whether or not Islam is racist or not. We have to have a standard, because racism can be found in any religion, in any ideology in any group, you can find racist people there. You can find pedophiles in any religion, in any groups. So when it comes down to deciding whether Islam is racist or not, my standard has nothing to do with how people behave. Okay. How I come to that decision is to see whether or not the religion itself teaches this. Okay, this is how I come to. I don't judge it by, how this person behaved towards me or how that person behaved towards me. I like to revise the ideology, check the ideology, study the ideology, and then see whether or not there is anything in it that may have influenced this person to, be racist to, let's say, me or anyone else, for that matter. That is the standard that I usually use. But I see you have a PowerPoint here, so I'm really interested to see, how you've approached this topic.
So I just went with. I mean, as I said, I've been around debates. I've looked online, and reflected on our discussions in our private group. So I thought, let's just bring up the ones that seem to come over and over again, and we can discuss them. So the first one is this raisin head situation, where you had Muhammad, refer to a black Muslim as a raisin head. Now, I've heard you. Let me see if I've just. No, I haven't done that. Okay, go back. So I've heard you raise this before. I think the scripture is about a Muslim who was, I guess, rebelling or not wanting to accept a certain person as a leader. And Muhammad saying, even if the person is a raisin head, you should accept it. Now, what is your personal view on that?
I think it's important to first.
I mean, you wrote it up, so maybe you know a bit more about the scripture. What I've done, and I think this is important, and this is what I was mentioning to Hassan, I've made a point of putting, the Muslim side of things forward. So according to Muslims here, the translation is, even if a black slave with a head like a raisin leads you, okay? According to Muslims, it's not racist because it emphasizes the leadership, the legitimacy of the person's leadership, and it simply describes hair texture, not meant derogatorily. So this is me putting forward and making it clear that I'm allowing, the Muslim point of view to come forward. I'm not just, putting my own view in it. And then we can discuss it. Now, what's your view on that, personally? I'll give you my view.
First of all, for all the Muslims listening, this comes from Sahih al-Bukhari 7142. All right. And it was narrated by Anas bin Malik. And it says, Allah's messenger said, you should listen to and obey your ruler, even if he was an Ethiopian black slave whose head looks like a raisin. Okay. The reason why I think this is racist is because he's addressing royalty. Okay. And when you address royalty, there's a level of respect that you have to have. Okay. There was no need. It was completely unnecessary for him to say, even if his head looks like a raisin. There was no need for that. There was no need for that at all. All right. He could have just said, you should listen to and obey your ruler, even if he was an Ethiopian. Okay. That he could have stopped there. He didn't have to say whose head looks like a raisin. To me, that was an insult. But again, and that's another thing as well. This goes back to hold on a second. Bilbo Baggins. I don't know who this is. Bilbo Baggins. I think we know who this is. His brother Hassan. So I don't think there was any need to add that little bit there. Hello, guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so the reason why I think it's racist is because there was no need to characterize a Ethiopian royalty or in that way. There was no need for that. There There's there's no excuse for that. Okay, because is an Ethiopian royalty. You should have a bit more respect than to describe an Ethiopian royalty as a raisin head. For what?
Okay, Hassan.
Yeah, so I was listening.
Yeah.
It's an interesting live you guys are having. I appreciate JM having a more balance view, which is nice.
And Octavio?
Huh?
And Octavio?
I was about to mention it. Yeah. And I appreciate Octavio presenting a more, I guess, Islamophobic perspective, looking to see the worst in Islamic interpretation, which represents a certain proportion of the people who have objections with Islam, not necessarily seeing it as what it is, but seeing things that aren't necessarily there. So it seems to be a balanced discussion. But what made me jump in is one thing Octavio said. You said it's not an appropriate way to refer to royalty.
Okay.
I see. Yeah, because whenever you address, I mean, maybe you guys would address royalty in that manner. Maybe you think it's respectful to call a king. It's like if Muhammad, for example, is exalted, is very special to Muslims, and Muslims revere him. If I was to address him as a raisin head, or any term like that, you'd think that's a bit disrespectful. You shouldn't do that. I think the way you're supposed to address royalty is with a bit more respect. If you guys think it's okay, this type of language is okay, it's all right, it's acceptable, then maybe you've got different standards. But that's not my standards. I think we should address respect. Talking about the texture of their hair and describing it as raisin, I think it's rude. There's no need for that. It's a bit racist. It's a bit on the racist side there.
Here's my question. How do you know he was referring to royalty?
Okay, you should listen to and obey your ruler, even if he was an Ethiopian slave whose head looks like a raisin. So he was talking about listening and obeying to a ruler. And he was talking about even if this ruler was an Ethiopian black slave whose head. So he's even saying that, and then he's even saying that even if he was a slave, a black slave, but he's addressing a ruler, even if this ruler was an Ethiopian black slave whose head, it's just racist. Guys. It's just racist. There's no way around that.
I just wanted to round off.
Yeah, go ahead.
So he wasn't referring to a king. He was referring to anybody who's a ruler. And in the society, they considered black slaves to be the lowest of the society. And he was pointing out to them, even in your society, if a person who you consider to be the lowest, and you refer to him in the most abhorrent ways, even if he was to rule, you would still obey him. He wasn't referring to a king. He was referring to slaves taking leadership.
Okay, it says here, you should listen to and obey your ruler. So we're talking about obedience to a ruler, right?
Yeah.
So a ruler, usually, would you agree that a king can be a ruler?
Would I agree that a king can be a ruler? Yes.
Thank you. Do you think that when we talk about, royalty and so on, we're talking about people with a lot of money and power. Do you think these people could be could be rulers?
Where are you getting that from?
Due to power and stature and so on, do you think they could be rulers?
He was referring to slaves.
Okay. It says here, you should listen and obey. You should listen to and obey your ruler. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about obedience to a ruler, which could be a king, even if he was an Ethiopian black slave whose head looks like a raisin. Why mention his head looking like a raisin? Why mention that?
Let me quickly come in. Now, this is my view. I think I'm being completely objective. It's clear that the overall message that Muhammad was delivering was essentially an anti-racist message. Essentially, he was saying to the person, even if the guy is black, you should accept him. But the key part for me is, why did he have to make that statement? Because remember, he's talking to another Muslim. So why should a Muslim have to be reminded or scolded, or whatever word you want to use, about being racist if he's a Muslim? He's a Muslim believer. So my thing is, where did that racism come from if he's a Muslim?
Okay, so
and I think my next couple of slides, unfortunately, I think it's going to highlight why Muhammad would have to kind of remind him about his racism as a Muslim.
Can I respond to that one point you made? So he was speaking to, I think, a crowd of people.
Okay.
That's right.
All Muslims,
All Muslims, yes.
Okay.
But these were people who still, as he referred to them, had traits of Jahiliyyah, meaning they had the characteristics they had before they converted, before they became Muslims. So they're behaving in ways that would be the norm in Arabian culture at the time. They still had behavioral issues in accepting and practicing Islam as it should be practiced, which is anti-racism and what have you. So he was referring to them and trying to shake them up and say, you're still behaving in ways that you shouldn't be behaving, even though you're Muslims. Most of them probably would have been Muslim for maybe a few months up to a few years, and wouldn't have had interacted, and it would have been a culture shock for them to have the idea of a black person leading them in any way, shape, or form, especially a black slave.
You want to come back on that, Nelson, before I move to the next slide, or want to move on?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually thinking about what you guys were saying, and I was thinking of the equivalent to today. What could it be? What could we say today? If we were to translate this verse to the equivalent of today, what would that sound like? So I was saying you should listen to and obey your ruler, even if he was, I don't want to use a derogatory term on YouTube, but I'm sure you guys can think of these names.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it. The N word, N word, or the P word, or the Mali word, and then say.
You said the full word there.
I'm sorry, my bad. It came out, my bad. The N word, the M word.
We can touch on that later. We can touch on that word.
If he wasn't, a M word or N word or P word, smelly slave whose head looks like or something, or who smells or something, right? Let's just say someone was to say something like that. Would you guys consider? Because I understand the entire message you're saying. You should obey this ruler, even if he was this and that and that. My issue, and Jen brought up, highlighted it perfectly. It's just like, okay, the overall sentiment is to say obey this ruler, even if you look down upon this ruler, or even if you think this ruler is whatever.
Well, it's the even if is the problematic part, isn't it? It's the even if part. That's a problematic part.
Yeah, even
it's lower status. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's coming from a prophet, and then he uses a derogatory term to describe the people that he's referencing, and if we were to do that today using this type of language, anyone would turn around and say, okay, yes, this is racist, because he didn't have to do that. In order to say, he could have just said, look, you should listen to and obey your ruler, okay, regardless of who that person is. He could have just said it like that, and it would have been great. But yeah, continue, bro.
So this is again, Hassan could comment on this. This is another controversy that I see people being discussed, and it's about this idea that in heaven, some faces will be white and some faces will be black. I don't know if Hassan, I'm sure you've heard of this. And on the day of judgment, those who lied against Allah, their faces will be turned black. And apparently in paradise, their faces will be white in paradise, and in hell they'll be black. What is your view on that, Nelson?
I straight up racism. On that day, some faces will be white and some faces will be black. Okay, first of all, guys, let's and I'm glad that Hassan is here as well, because I like to be all the way fair. Hassan knows how I am.
Let me just finish up, Nelson, before you continue. Again, this is us being fair. So yes, it's a hadith. It talks about black in hell and white in heaven faces. This is the reference. It's Quran 3:106, and this is the Muslim interpretation. Metaphor for spiritual state, joy versus shame, not racial. Classical Arab uses colors symbolically. So as you can see, I'm being fair by putting the Muslim, statement forward in terms of what it means. However, as Hassan, so you can continue.
Yeah, can you put the entire? Because I've got the entire hadith here.
Put it up, bro. I didn't want to bombard it with scripture. That's why this kind of.
It's okay to bombard it. Abu Darda reported God's messenger saying, God created Adam when he created him and struck his right shoulder and brought forth.
That's a different one, but I saw that one too. Yeah, but that's a different one.
Yeah.
But I did see that one. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the context. This is why it's important to put the entire hadith, because he's talking about Adam's offspring. Okay.
Is this a hadith that's on the screen, or is this another one?
I think that's a question for you,
That's
Jay.
another one. What Nelson is taking is another one. It's not the same one I'm referring to.
Okay.
It's not the same one.
It's not the same one, but I did come across that one as well. If I'm honest, I did come across that one as well, and I was going to raise that one too, but I just thought I'd just go with what this one.
Yeah, because that's how I understand that hadith. Because my
It's
issue,
it's another one.
yeah, because my issue with this hadith. Can you put the entire hadith then so I can analyze it?
Quran 3:106. We could just put it up.
Correct.
Okay, let me do it.
Yeah.
Quran 3:106.
And I'm glad, brother. What's his name? Bo
Okay.
Bagger.
Let's do this thing. I'll go for the stage and then we'll add something here. Okay, so how do I add now?
Do you want me to share something?
Yeah, you can share it, and you can share the
No,
current.
I don't have it available, but if you've got it available, I can just put it on the screen.
How do I put it on it? How do I?
What's the because I can just read it out. What's the
Wait, let me, I've got it here. I can read it out. Let me read it out.
all right, go ahead.
On that day, some faces will turn white and some faces will turn black. As for those whose faces turn black, to them it will be said, did you disbelieve after your belief? Then taste the punishment of what you used to reject.
Oh, I see. Some faces. Okay, on that day. So he's talking about on the resurrection day, and he's talking about a transformation happening, and this transformation will be resembled by, by colors, basically. if it turns white or turns black, and whoever turns black basically goes to hell, and whoever turns white goes. That's not that. Yeah, that's more to do with a spiritual state or something that happens during resurrection. It's not necessarily anything to do with racism.
Okay.
Per se. That's how I would understand that.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So as I said, I'm bringing up stuff that I've seen being used. Because I've seen people use this to discuss racism, so I'm putting it out there for us to discuss. And even you're saying that you don't think that that's a reference to racism.
Yes, just to respond to that, and the one that is a reference to racism, I've got it here, and we can address that right after, because that one is definitely very, very racist.
Can you bring the presentation back on the screen?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Okay, so I'm glad we discussed that one. Now this is the interesting one now.
Okay.
This term. Now, Hassan, do you want to chime in here before I move on?
What in reference to what Octavia said, or what's coming
no,
up
what
next?
this term means? Abd.
I mean, slave.
Okay. Does it have any racial connotations?
No.
Okay, now this is what I want to show you guys now. Okay, now I'm going to read. So this is a situation that happened live on Sudanese television
Okay.
during President Omar Bashir's trial. Apparently, one of the Bashar's defense team was chatting among themselves in the courtroom and didn't realize their camera microphones were on. One of them was heard to say, "This slave with this ugly nose irritates me." The Arabic word for slave is abd, I don't know if I pronounce it. It's often used in Sudan to refer to people whose perceived roots are thought to be African instead of Arab. And it's a derogatory term used to describe black people. So,
Yeah.
Hassan, it is a racial term.
Can I respond?
Yep.
No, the term itself is not racist. The word slave is slave. A slave can be a black person, a white person.
Okay.
As you would agree, the word slave is racially neutral because you can be a European slave, you can be an African slave. That everybody has been slaves at some point throughout history. Every race of people, right?
Facts.
Okay.
Yeah. Would you agree with that? Yes or no?
Yeah, I agree with it.
Now, in terms of how it's used in modern Arab culture, and pretty much throughout Arab culture, or more modern Arab culture, I guess maybe, it's referred to a black person. So you would use the word for a sub-Saharan, whether it be from Senegal to Somalia to South Africa to Angola, wherever. So it's the example that you're giving isn't a rare one, and it isn't an uncommon one. So yeah.
Okay, but is that word in the Quran?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So that is kind of slightly problematic, do you think?
No, because the word slave is in the Bible.
Yeah, but why has it become synonymous? If it's in the Quran,
yeah,
was it not synonymous with black people in the Quran? Then you said it wasn't.
No, of course not. No.
So how is it? So what's happened then? Why is it now? Why now is it become synonymous with black Africans?
Because Arab culture is quite racist, I guess, and it's not necessarily Islamic in the sense.
Yeah, Hassan's very right. Arabs are very racist people.
Okay, I just find it interesting to me personally that it's because we do have. I'm going to move on now to the black slaves of the white prophet, and this is an interesting point to me because I did find out that Muhammad is seen as considered white, which I didn't know this until I did a bit of research. That he's actually described as white.
He's actually described as white. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I do find that quite interesting because even I just thought that was quite interesting. And also there's this situation where he traded 2 black African slaves for 1 non-African slave, and that is probably the most used one in terms of highlighting racism because it directly references Muhammad's behavior now. I know, Nelson, you've had a lot to say on this before, so I don't know if you want to chime in on that.
Oh yes, I'll be happy to, very happy to. There came a slave pledged allegiance to Allah's apostle on migration. He, the holy prophet, did not know that he was a slave. So he did not know that he was a slave. Then there came his master and demanded him back. Whereupon Allah's apostle said, "Sell him to me." And he bought him for 2 black slaves. And he did not afterwards take allegiance from anyone until he had asked him whether he was a slave or a free man. So, all right, okay. Why do I think this is racist? First of all, let's put it out there. What's happening here is Muhammad is a slave owner. Okay, that's just a fact.
That's a problematic part right away. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the first thing we need to highlight. All right, this is a slave trade is happening. Slave trade is happening here. Okay, in this verse. Okay, and obviously, whoever he saw, he thought. Well, let's be clear. He thought he could buy people. So he saw someone that he liked, and he thought, he didn't even know that he was a slave. He just thought he could buy them, and the way he thought of purchasing them. This is the racist part. To me, is that he thinks, look, I'll give you 2 black slaves for that 1 person. He thought the lives of those two. Obviously, black people were. I mean, I don't want to say it, but it's actually quite. It's actually really evil. Black people have obviously looked down upon and looked as low creatures and so on, to the point where he's even said, "Look, I'll give you two of these guys here. You know, they two of them is worth this one person here who's not black." Okay, so obviously, to me, that's where the slavery comes. That's where the racism comes from. Is that people are so low, that he'll give you an extra one. He's not going to just do a normal trade. Look, I've got this black slave over here. Putting the slave trade aside, he's not being fair about it. He's not saying, okay, look, there's just this, you know what I mean? I've got this black slave over here. I'll trade you for that person there that I want. Okay, that would be bad enough, but it's not that. He's saying black lives were so not valuable that he thought, okay, let me give you two of these for that guy. That's where the slavery to me comes from. Sorry, the racism comes from. That's where the racism comes from. That the black lives are not valuable at all.
Then,
Yeah.
Anyone into that?
What's that? So in terms of slavery, it's often practiced. It's not necessarily slavery in the common sense, because obviously the transatlantic slave trade, which was a racial trade, race was a fundamental part of slavery back. Well, slavery is a fundamental part of the transatlantic slave trade, which obviously was championed by a well-known church, which has been mentioned on this podcast before.
The Catholic Church.
Yeah, the Catholic Church. Yes, that's it. Having said that, in terms of him being white, I think there's a bit too much emphasis on that, because he did champion anti-black issues at the time. He even referred to himself as a son of a black woman in one hadith. So the idea that he may have been a pale-skinned person, therefore that being a part of his racial identity, is not true. He did scold companions, or not companions, but people at the time, for their anti-black racism. I need to find the hadith though, where he referred to himself as the son of a black woman. Having said that, yes, is the issue slavery, or is the issue anti-blackness? I mean, his head of treasury was a black person.
but why did he feel the need to trade 2 for 1? Is the issue?
I'm sure I can find a hadith where he
Racist or not? The issue is it racist or not? And do find that hadith, because I looked for that hadith and I haven't found it yet. But is the issue race? Is it racist or not? We know he was a slave trader. We know all of that already. They traded slaves. But is the issue racist or not? Selling 2 black slaves for 1 non-black.
Well, not necessarily. I think you might be looking into it and seeing things that aren't necessarily the case. I have to find a hadith where maybe he traded X amount of non-black slaves for 1 slave of another race, or maybe of the same race. That maybe the idea of 2 versus 1 is not necessarily a racial thing. But I'd have to find that, but I can't. I have to look for it. In terms of him being racist because of this, I think it's a stretch.
Okay.
What do you reckon, Jan?
Yeah, I personally do find this probably the most problematic thing. I think there definitely was. I mean, Sanders kind of highlighted that there was an anti-black sentiment all throughout that part of the world, and he suggested it was pre-Islam. I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I don't know. I have to do research on that. However, this definitely ties into it. I think you can't get away the fact that in his mind, he had to get the slave he wanted. 1 black slave wasn't enough, because that would have been the first. I mean, you're kind of a businessman in a way. You're a businessman, so you would go for 1 for 1. And the fact that he went 2 for 1 shows a disregard, kind of, almost, for.
But is it about race, or is it because maybe that person he wanted was of high status and ability or something? Because there'd be times where somebody would be racist towards Bilal, his companion, and he asked for Bilal's freedom, and there were times where somebody would be racist to Bilal, an Arab, and he would scold the Arab and say, "You can't do this. You can't say this to him." He didn't have to do that. He could have just said, "Well, this is a part of the culture. I'll let it go." But he actually scolded them and then spoke out against their anti-blackness.
So is there an argument there that potentially he was kind of catering to racism then, in a way? by not saying, hey, 1 for 1. I'm not gonna. I know you don't think that this guy's worth that guy.
Appeasing racism. I see what you're saying. Buying
Yeah,
into the racial
so there's a little bit of that going on there, in my opinion.
Not necessarily, because the person maybe he wanted would have been worth. Maybe. I'm not too sure. I'd have to look into the details. But maybe that person was a high-ranking general or whatever it is. Maybe they had some skills that maybe was reason. I don't know. Whatever it is.
None of that is in the hadith, though.
I'm speculating. I'll say that. Having said that, there were people who wanted to convert and told him specifically, "I don't want to be shoulder to shoulder with black people or slaves or whatever." And he told them no. He said, "If you convert, it's up to you. It will save you, but I'm not going to change my social order to appease your racial bias." So the idea that
I can't argue with that. When you say things like that, I can't turn around and say no, or so, in a way, in that sense, I can't say anything against that. Maybe Nelson knows more.
Yeah, can I just comment on that? Because Muhammad's supposed to be a prophet. He's supposed to know better. He's supposed to know the judgment of God. So let's start off there. And then he says, if you look at the hadith, it says he did not know that he was a slave. He didn't know that this person was a slave. Okay? So he just wanted that person for himself. So he did not have knowledge that this person was a slave. He just wanted to buy him. That is problematic in itself. The fact that I can look at a person and think I can buy this person. Okay? And then he thought, okay, I can buy you. I want to buy you. Because the hadith says he did not know that he was a slave. So he looked at another human being. He thought, I don't know that he was a slave or not, but nevertheless, I want to buy you. And then he thought, you know what? Once he found out that he was a slave, okay, because it says, then they came his master and demanded him back, whereupon the last apostle. So by now he had knowledge that he was a slave. He said, well, sell him to me. Okay. And he bought him for 2 black slaves. All right. He obviously thought, you know what? He probably won't accept 1 black slave because the lives, and this is what I'm saying, him being a prophet and knowing God's judgment on these things, he would know the value of human life. But instead of him first presenting 1 black slave as an appropriate, trade, he gives 2. Because he understood that the lives of black people in that part of the world was basically, it was low. Black people were the lowest of the lowest. So he thought, you know what? I'll give you two black slaves for this person. So to me, that's problematic because he went with the value of society, not with the value of the judgment of God. Because as a prophet, you should know that every single human being is valuable to God because they were created by God. But for you to say, okay, well, I live in this society, this is how this society values black people, this is what they think of black people, and guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to go according to society and what society demands, instead of him first going according to what God would judge it.
Let me ask a quick question, Hassan. From your knowledge of Jesus, what do you think Jesus would have done in this situation?
I think he would have. He probably would have engaged in the slave trade, most likely. He probably would have done the same thing.
And given 2 for 1.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. 2 for 1, maybe 1 for 1. I'm not too sure.
No, so what do you think?
That's nonsense.
Can I argue why that wouldn't be nonsense?
Yeah, I was in the middle of saying something.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No. I'll let you. I won't interrupt your flow.
I was just saying that Jesus wouldn't do that. It just wouldn't do that. There's nothing to suggest that he would. First of all, he never engaged in slave trading. He never bought slaves. He never. He never sold slaves. He never did anything.
It was around in his time too, by the way.
And slavery was allowed at this time. He never did that. He did not engage in any of that at all. So there's no evidence of that. I would be very preoccupied if Jesus engaged in that. That would be a point of contention for me, because the Genesis says we're made in the image of God. So for him to start selling human beings who are made in the image of God for profit, for money, and Genesis even says if you sell another human being, because Jesus always quoted the scriptures. So for Genesis says if you sell another human being, you should be put to death. Whoever tries to profit from selling another human being, they need to be put to death. That person needs to be put to death. So Jesus wouldn't have engaged in that. Well, no, wouldn't have. He didn't, because we got the Gospels, and the Gospel record his life and what he did. So we would have known by now whether Jesus sold slaves, or or had slaves or anything of that nature. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, so I look at Jesus and I think, well, you were there for a short mission. You didn't, you were just trying to correct the Jewish society at the time. But those who attribute themselves to you were very similar to what's, I guess, what may be referred to in the Old Testament and such. And I look at Paul, and Paul himself said, if you're a slave, carry on into your slavery, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. But the idea being that if Paul is a representative of Jesus or the message of Jesus, and Paul didn't abolish slavery, didn't fight against it, didn't say that it's wrong in any way, shape, or form, but actually supported it and encouraged it, wouldn't that be Jesus having the same message as him?
Well, you said he either supported it or encouraged it. I would love to see where Paul would have supported or encouraged slavery. Did Paul himself have slaves?
No. I don't know. I assume not.
Did Paul sell slaves? Have you ever seen Paul selling slaves?
Well, if he didn't have them, I doubt he would have sold them.
Yeah. Did he buy slaves?
Well, I guess that'd be a no.
Because Paul is recorded saying there is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you all are one in Jesus Christ. And he actually, one person who was a slave and whose owners converted to Christianity or converted to Christ, Paul said, don't. And they gave him that person freedom, because do not treat that person as a slave anymore. Embrace him as your brother, because that person was a slave. He was born a slave. He was into that family for a very long time. That's not embracing slavery. Because Paul didn't sell slaves, didn't have slaves, didn't buy slaves, didn't do any of that. He didn't trade slaves. He didn't trade a slave. And Jesus himself has said he came to release the slaves, the captives. So there's nothing there that suggests that Jesus would have been for slavery.
I'm not so well versed in the Bible, and the Quran I should do better. In the Hadith, I guess I should do better. But I'm your average Muslim. I stick to what I should be doing and focusing on that. And there's enough to do. But I really do wish some of those quote unquote pro-black Muslims were here to make these arguments. This is not something I focus on, because generally speaking, personally, I don't care about race. I've never cared about it. I don't think it's a major issue. Is there racism? Yes. Should it be stopped? Yes. But people are people. They'll find ways to do evil no matter what. They'll use scripture, whether it be the Bible or the Torah or the Quran or whatever book that they have, to perpetuate their own evil ends or whatever. But I'm trying my best there, so I'll say that much.
So
but,
I'll say this in closing. I'm just going to show this because I think it's important to show.
Can I respond to to Octavio's point?
Yeah.
So Paul, he said, Paul tells slaves to obey their master and respect and sincerity. Masters are told to trade slaves well, remembering that they also have a master in heaven. Okay, so the slave is still remain a slave, but you both have masters in heaven. This is I don't even know how to pronounce this. Emphasis. One second, I need to help pronouncing some of these Bible verses, Bible chapters.
I know where that is. Oh yeah.
One second. Let me just Google the pronunciation. One second.
You know that word, Nelson.
Oh,
I've heard that word. It is a difficult word.
Ephesians.
Oh, Ephesians. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I could have told you that.
Yeah, in another one he says, Paul says, and I'll put this all in the comment section so I just get the right context. Paul says, if you have a slave, don't let them trouble you, but if you can, again, free them. So he does encourage freeing slaves, but there's another verse where he says you can beat them, and as long as they survive, it's fine. So there's many references.
That's Old Testament. Now you're mixing up stuff now.
Okay, fair enough. I'll put it. Maybe it's Old Testament.
The passage that brother, sorry Hassan, I didn't.
Yeah, go ahead.
The passage that brother.
Let me round off and then I'll let you respond.
Yeah,
So basically the idea being that Jesus would. It's either Paul's lying or Jesus' lying. One of the two is lying, right? But I think the idea that, and Jesus could have just come down and said, all slaves should be free and no end of slavery and it's wrong or whatever it may be. And I don't think he did. Not to question his character because I'm not here for that. But the idea that the slave trade, in a sense, first of all, is the same as slavery now, is or post transatlantic slavery is the same as it was transatlantic slavery or whatever is not true, because the transatlantic slavery is a whole nother major issue in and of its own. It's pretty much altered the word slavery to something far more evil than it actually was before then, and most Christians argue that. Having said that, in terms of race, I don't think I've seen anything that solidifies that Prophet Muhammad was a racist, or that Allah is a racist in any way, shape, or form. If anything, the argument is against that, considering Adam himself, if we're going to just focus on words like black and white, is referred to as a person being created from black mud. So is it that black means race in one chapter, but it doesn't mean race in another? I would argue it never means racism in any of them, because it's a post-transatlantic slavery concept of racism anyway, to a certain degree. There's tribalism was more of an issue back then. In some cases, racism, probably in the Arabian Peninsula, certainly. I'll let you guys carry on.
Okay.
Just to respond to that quickly, a lot of people think Christianity is about some kind of like social revolution or something like that. It's nothing to do with that. Slaves, obey your earthly masters. This is found in Ephesians 6, verse 5. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, and with sincerity of heart, just as you would obey Christ. Remember, this is being written in a time when people owned slaves and had slaves, and having slaves was something considered to be normal. Obey them not only to win their favor when their eye is on you, but as slaves of Christ, but as slaves of Christ, because Christ is not about picking up sword and killing people because you believe what they're doing is wrong. We teach that every single human being is born with a sinful nature. We are all capable of good and evil, regardless of our social status. But as slaves of Christ, doing the will of God from your heart, serve wholeheartedly as if you were serving the Lord, not people, because you know that the Lord will reward each one for whatever good they do, whether they are slave or free. And masters, treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that he who is both their master and yours is in heaven, and there is no favoritism with him. So he makes it clear that there is no favoritism between the person, between the master and the slave. He's basically saying this is the condition that we find ourselves in. And just like, remember what Christ said, Christ died forgiving the sins of the people that were crucifying him. It's not that he's saying that slavery is okay, because we actually see him in one of his letters saying to accept this brother who has been freed, accept him as your brother in Christ. So he understood that people are not just going to become just going to give up slavery or just going to turn against slavery. He knows it's a spiritual resolve. It's something that has to happen. It's a spiritual transformation that has to take place in people before they are going to give up the act of slavery. So we see him commending a family that owned slaves. Okay, we see him commending them. We see him saying, "Well done." that this is wonderful. Basically, you've come to the right conclusion that there is that slavery is wrong and you shouldn't have slaves. And this is why he even warns the people who own slaves and masters: treat your slaves in the same way. Do not threaten them, since you know that he who is both their master and yours, meaning God, is in heaven. And there is no favoritism with God. So God, in spite of the injustices that we see on earth, there is no favoritism with God. You, both of you, will come under under judgment. And he was very, very well aware, Paul. He would have been of what you call it, that we're all made in the image of Christ and we are all equal. That's why he says there's no Jew, there is no slave, there is no nothing in the eyes of. I'm paraphrasing it wrong, but this is basically what he's saying. So he was anti-slavery, and Jesus says he came to set the slaves free. But you're not going to change people's minds by picking up swords. That's not how usually, people are going to change their minds about slavery. Like that family that owned slaves, they changed their minds. How did they change their mind? Did they change their mind because that slave that they owned picked up a sword and tried to kill them? No. Because that slave was obedient to Christ. They saw something in him and they wanted to become like that, and they changed their hearts and minds, and they now accepted that as not as a slave anymore. They accepted that person as a brother in Christ, and that's how the transformation started to happen. But yeah, that's my thing. But we're talking about.
Yeah, good. Well, this is my final slide, but it basically is, and this is for me is the biggest problem. And this is what concerns me the most when it comes to this question. The fact that in Muslim-led countries, in countries where Islam is the dominant religion, there is a high level of anti-black slavery and racism. Sorry, and that's what I find very problematic. Because if you're a religious country, dominated by a religious country, by religion. Why are we seeing? I mean, I brought up this chart here. So, for example, the majority of citizens in Tunisia, Iraq, Jordan, Palestine, Sudan, in Lebanon, all acknowledge that there's racial discrimination against mostly black people. In Sudan, 63% of the citizens say that discrimination against black individuals is a problem to a great or medium extent. And if you look at the graph here, it kind of highlights the extent of racism, especially discrimination against black individuals in most of these Arab Muslim-led countries. And that is what I find problematic. And that's why, is there an argument there that there's stuff that's within the hadiths and within the Quran that has fueled this behavior? Because if Hassan's point was this racism that existed in the Arab Peninsula was pre-Islam, okay, some noise in the background, was pre-Islam. However, post-Islam, why hasn't things changed? And that's the key question for me. Why hasn't things changed post-Islam? Go ahead.
So in response, so just looking at the graph without going into any details, I can agree with this graph. I can agree to anti-black sentiment in all these countries, violence, genuine oppression and hatred of the black identity or black people in general. You want to say?
Yeah, Hassan knows it's true. Hassan knows it's true.
We can't deny it.
Yeah, well, because I'm a truthful person.
Yeah, and we have the graphs to prove it.
Yeah, I could deny it.
And the hadiths to prove it too. Yeah, go ahead.
No hadiths to prove it. Now, here's my issue: that it's been associated with Islam. This has nothing to do with Islam. The Arabian Peninsula, the Arab world, generally speaking, has always been pretty racist and has cultural and tribal issues and sectarian issues and a variety of other issues. Racism is just one of them. But if you were to, this is my frustration though. It's the association with Islam, because I'm sure I could come up with the same conclusion, certainly, when it comes to South America, an area that is particularly Catholic or mainly inclined towards Catholicism, that has a lot of anti-black racism.
Right.
Considering the majority of slaves in the transatlantic slave trade went to South America rather than North America, and but I think by a factor of 9. And then you see the progress within African Americans in terms of politics, finance, education, whatever sector you can think of, despite their how can I say the pushback that they were receiving throughout their time there. The success that they made in comparison to South America, you'd think that the success for Black people in South America would be 10 times as much, considering there's 10 times the Black influence in South America. There would be no South America without Black people to a certain degree. But yet not as much progress as their North American counterparts. Why? Because South America is drenched in anti-Blackness. It's been horrendously and systematically and institutionally anti-Black, even to the point where immigration policies were in Mexico. You're far more likely to gain citizenship and visas and things like this if you're from a European background, from a European country, than you are from an African country. Which is very strange, considering, as I said, most of those countries would not exist without the Black identity, or the African, sub-Saharan, West African influence. People, manpower, labor, intelligence, or whatever you can think of. There is no South America without Black people. But the racism is strong there, probably stronger than or maybe not as strong as it is in the Middle Eastern countries, but certainly on par to some, maybe stronger actually, considering there's a lot of pushback there has to be. But I wouldn't trace that back to Christianity. I wouldn't put that back down to the Bible or Jesus. I would say people have used the religion to misrepresent it and for their own gains, absolutely. But I don't think it has anything to do with Christianity. It's just people who are evil, and Octavio go into great details of Christian kings using this for that objective and this objective and so on and so forth. This is a Middle Eastern problem. It's not an Islamic problem. If anything, the Prophet Muhammad for years fought against this, said, if a Black man is a leader, obey him. I am the son of a Black woman. I have to find the hadith. What else is there? He is one of me and I'm one of him, referring to Bilal. Him saying that your footsteps are ahead of mine in heaven, when referring to Bilal. I can hear your footsteps, whether you're ahead of me or I can hear your footsteps. So great detail of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and even Umar bin Khattab referring to Bilal as his master, right? So amongst the most devout companions and the Prophet Muhammad himself, anti-racism was a part of their da'wah, a part of their preaching, but the society didn't really care, and for some reason there's a lot of issues within the culture. But that's the culture. It's not necessarily the religion.
Okay. Okay, a quick question then. So how do you mention the Arab Peninsula?
Sorry, brother, can I just point something out?
Yeah.
I completely disagree with that. With what Hassan said there. If we're talking about the sin of racism, if we're talking about racism, is just, to me, it's just another sin. It's a sin. It's wrong. It's evil. It's wrong because you're belittling the image of God, or you're belittling another human being. And when we look at the West and we look at the Middle East, nowhere has been the problem of racism addressed more than in the West. Countries like South America, there's the level of interracial marriage that happens in there is extremely high. So this idea that you can never completely get rid of a certain specific sin. Racism is it's going to always exist, okay? But the problem of racism, no one can deny that it has been addressed more in countries where Christianity has been historically attached to. So you don't find that in the Middle East. In the Middle East, is still the same thing. And yes, it is to do with the hadiths. It is to do with the Quran. Because I've even got one more verse to bring up, because I think this.
So I could take my thing off the screen now. So
I wanted to send it to you, brother. If you could share it for me, I would actually appreciate it. But the thing, I've already sent it to you on WhatsApp. But the thing is, it's because when we look, I've been to South America. When you look the interracial marriage there is extremely high. Is there racism in there? Yes, absolutely, 100%. There is. There's racism everywhere. You're never going to get rid of racism, but I'm talking about when it comes to addressing racism or addressing the problems that racism brings and so on. And I'm sorry, there's no other. Only in Christian countries, only in countries that have been historically Christian, is the problem of racism fully addressed. You don't find that in Islamic countries at all. Let a black man try to marry an Arab woman in Saudi Arabia, see what happens. It just doesn't exist. Even a Somalian woman trying to marry a non-Somalian man in Somalia, that doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And there's and that's
Somalia's not an Arab country.
That's due. I'm not saying it was. I didn't say it was. But the thing is, what I'm saying is, yes, and the problem of racism is not addressed there. It's not an issue. It's not something that's talked about. It's not something that becomes news, like worldwide news. It's not. It doesn't happen there. And I usually, just to finish off, I usually tell people who are very critical of the West or the progress that the West has made in terms of fighting racism. I usually tell them, why don't you go and live in Saudi Arabia? Why do you go and live in one of these Muslim countries? All right, and let's see how much protesting you will do as far as racism goes. And they said, nah, they don't want to, because they know what time it is. They know they will just basically shut up because they don't address these issues. They don't address racism is not an issue for them. But in this country, we address the issue. We've confronted the issue. We've passed laws to fight against it because we've realized that morally racism is wrong. Nowhere else has the problem of racism addressed more than in the West. Jam,
You can share the screen, yeah.
Yeah, I can share the screen. Yeah.
So yeah, that's it there.
I sent you
It's the same one. It's the same one. I just didn't break it down, but that's the same one.
all right, okay.
Highlighted. The one highlighted.
And I want Brother Hassan to basically talk to me about this one here. And this is found in Mishka al Masabi 19. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the Arabic. Abu Darda reported God's messenger saying, God created Adam when he created him and struck his right shoulder and brought forth his offspring white like small ants. And he struck his left shoulder and brought forth his offspring black as though they were charcoal. Then he said to the party on his right side, to paradise, and I do not care. And he said to the party in his left shoulder, to hell, and I do not care. I mean, that is just to give you guys.
And for me, this is unfortunately, I don't think you made some good points, Nelson. That
Amazing points.
Racism is rife in these countries. I mean, on Arab TV, they still do blackface, and they will mock black people on Arab TV. They'll literally put on wigs and afros and fake dreads and blacken their faces and mock black people openly on TV. As you mentioned before, there's racism within intermarriages. Sometimes the idea of a black African Muslim marrying a pale-skinned Arab is it's just not heard of. So we can't ignore the fact that there's an issue there, and we can't also ignore the fact when you have these types of verses that on face value, that Hassan, you have to admit on face value, it does seem to put forward the notion that black is ugly and sinful and wicked, and white is good and holy and etc. Now, and then you have some of the other, you have the scripture with the two slaves being exchanged, the raising head scripture. You have, there was, there was guys that were saying things about Satan looked like a black man. This is in one of the hadith. They describe Satan. Someone said, if you want to see Satan, look at him. And it was a black man.
Yeah, I remember that one. I forgot about that one. Yeah.
So so when all this is in the Quran or the Hadith, so we can't close our eyes to the fact that there could be, I believe there is personally, a correlation. That's what I'm going to say on that. But obviously, I would disagree, but that's how I see it.
Yes, I would disagree. So in reference to Octavio's point, he said the West has been the one who's championing or fighting against racism the most in comparison to most parts of the world. It's all well and good burning the house down and then volunteering to repair it, the shed. The West has been a champion and it built its wealth and power and status off racism. It's a nonsense argument. And what I was referring to specifically South America, a part of the world which is extremely regressive when it comes to racial racism. Extremely. There are 10 times the amount of black people in South America than there are throughout the whole of the Middle East. 130 million black South Americans. Not one Obama, not one minister of health, not one minister of education, not one minister who has championed, because the natives themselves, I say the natives would be the native South Americans, even they have issues trying to go up against the Italian, the Spanish, and the English immigrants that come to the country on a regular basis to establish some sort of status. So no, the West is only trying to better their image while they still practice a global racism through their persecution of and the exploitation of African countries. Some of them just fight a reasonable portion of the French economy, not a large amount because I've heard exaggerations, but a reasonable portion of European economies come from the exploitation of Africa to this day. So it's all for show. It's virtue signaling and what have you. That's,
so I would agree. I would agree that maybe Nelson slightly is overemphasizing the West, because I think he's compared maybe the UK. I don't think you can look at what's happening here in the UK as any kind of. I've traveled all around Europe. I've traveled to many countries in Europe. I mean, talking from Spain to Norway to Sweden I've traveled around, and I've always said, UK is the only country that really has tried to tackle. I mean, even though it's not perfect here, as you know, I would tell you that it's not perfect, but. Truth, to be truthful, the UK is the only European country that has really tried to tackle racism. If you go to, I mean, you mentioned Portugal, Nelson, we spoke earlier. If you go to Spain, Portugal, these other countries, the racism is rife and there's no protection from it. Even France doesn't even acknowledge racial categories, which means that discrimination happens and you can't even point to it and say, well, this group, we're all French. And so, yeah, I think you're slightly overestimating the West when it comes to addressing racism. Maybe the UK, also America has had their issues, but apart from that, yeah, there's not much difference between some of these European countries and some of these Arab countries, if I'm honest. There isn't.
Yeah. That's not even. Sorry, Octavio. You said a lot. I just want to respond to quite a few of your points. I don't want to stop you from speaking, but I just don't want to lose my momentum. I did listen politely to the things that you did say. So if you don't mind, I'll just carry on and I'll round off my points. And that's let alone. Or am I being rude? Did you want to respond, Octavio? Or?
No, go ahead. Go.
Okay, thank you. So and that's let alone talking about Eastern Europe, countries that are majority Christian, identify as being Christian, but some of the most abhorrent, violent, racist.
That's true. That is true.
You speak to women who come from Europe and come to this country and say, and do intermarry, but they wouldn't want their black husbands or brown husbands going back to visit their home countries because they know they would face street violence, if anything else. Don't go down this road, don't go here, don't go there. Second point Octavio made is he sees people in the West, black and brown people in the West specifically, if I could give it a bit more detail, complaining about racism in the West. Try living in a Middle Eastern country as his objection. He's right. The UK and North America to a certain degree have, on an individual level, given rights to citizens of black and brown heritage or black and brown identity or foreign identity, more rights than a lot of Middle Eastern countries, besides certain countries that are like the UAE, Dubai. Sorry, the UAE.
Dubai. I won't put Dubai. Actually, I've been there, and I was actually quite impressive at their race relations.
Same with Saudi Arabia now. They're really opening up the world to the West, and they're very welcoming. But to be fair, your passport is a major. If you have a British passport or an American passport or a European passport, and you're a black person, you are considered far greater status than somebody who has an African passport. You might. It's for show to a certain degree. I'll admit that it's an effort to appease the West and have global dominance because the West is the one in power. Colonialism has ended, but it's sort of shifted into something else, and the West is the one that influences and does have the ability to turn the lights off for a lot of these Middle Eastern countries at any point, right? So is it true grassroots progression into a more race positive society? No, it's really just people, countries wanting to have a good image and then deal with it. Because you speak to those black people who don't have Western passports, they'll tell you how horrible it is, whether it be in Lebanon, whether it be in Saudi Arabia. Although it's changing, I have to admit it's changing. But a lot of these Middle Eastern countries are extremely anti-black. Now, having said that, it goes back to the hadith, and that's the argument. The argument, it goes back to the hadith, which ultimately means the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a racist, or Allah is a racist. Let's cut to the chase. That hadith is quoted of striking the right shoulder, white people, not white people, but white falling out, and then the white goes to heaven, and then striking the left shoulder and black falls out, and the black people go into hell, is a nonsense interpretation. It is nonsense to interpret that as black people go to hell and white people go to heaven, because the Quran itself, one could argue, refers to Adam himself as being a black person. He is said to be made from black mud. So is it that this black man, who is the father of all humanity, biologically speaking, if you believe in Adam, if you believe we all came from Adam, this black man is the father of all creation, but some of his creation are going to hell because they're black, and some of it just doesn't make sense. It's all over the place. And then you go back to the Prophet Muhammad himself, who championed was anti-racism, going to the point of saying no Arab is superior to an Arab, no non-Arab is superior to an Arab, repeatedly going on and hammering home the fact that your racial identity, your tribal identity means nothing. In fact, it's closer to ignorance. If he's saying one thing and Allah is saying one thing, and then the society is saying another, isn't the problem more the society than it is the how can I say the scripture and the verses and the Quran and the Hadith or Allah, Prophet Muhammad or Allah? I think for somebody to argue, oh, Allah is racist and the Prophet Muhammad is racist, but Christianity is great and the Christian world is great, and or the Hindu world is great, or not to harp on about Christianity, or the world's great and these countries have done nothing but good in terms of promoting race relations and being more positively racial, and therefore it comes from Jesus. I think it's a stretch. I think it's propaganda used in today's Western side, because race is a big issue in the West now, and progressivism, and that's the thing. And I think some, how can I say, what's the word, evangelists or people arguing for religion use this as a way to misrepresent Islam, and I think it's weak. I think it's a weak argument. I think it's the social media world that we live in now, and it says a horrible thing about a lot of Black African Muslims, that they're all stupid, and that they haven't seen it, and that they're following a racist Arab man or a racist deity. It says a lot about the person's motivation to come to this conclusion rather than the actual scripture itself.
Jam, quick question.
He stepped out.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm here.
Jam, quick question. I'm going to give you, before I go into what I wanted to say, I'm going to give you a choice. Would you rather live in Bulgaria or Yemen?
Yemen, if I'm honest.
Yemen, the Muslim
if I'm
country.
honest. Do you know why? Do you know why? At least in Yemen, I could probably find a little bit of solidarity, even though I'm not saying there won't be racism, but I might be able to find some solidarity with some other brown-skinned people. In Bulgaria, I would be literally like a flipping raisin in a bowl of porridge.
What colors do you think Yemenis people are?
Yeah, but there's darker people there too. I know it's an Arab country, but I know I can find some people my complexion as well.
You would say the same thing for any Muslim country, right? You'd rather live there than, let's say, Bulgaria, for example.
Yeah, I would not live in Eastern Europe. Scares me. I wouldn't even go there on holiday.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even go there on holiday. I've heard terrible stories about people. What happens to black people? Look at even Ukraine. What's happening in Ukraine?
Have you been to Yemen? Have you been to Yemen? Have you been to Bulgaria? Sorry, have you been to Yemen?
No, I haven't been to Yemen.
Have you been to Lebanon?
No.
Okay. All right. All right.
Okay, let me ask you, where would you rather be?
Definitely in a historically Christian country than anywhere near in the Islamic world. I wouldn't go nowhere near that. As a Christian, I'll immediately be.
But so it's not a racial. It's not down to a racial issue. It's just because of the ideology.
No, it's down to racial issues. They look down on people of races.
The Bulgarians.
No, all I'm saying is no, because the point that I was going to make is, I mean, if you see how black people are treated in those countries, I've seen some videos. It's ridiculous. It's evil. It's just pure evil. But if you're saying you'd rather live there, then I mean, I would love to see. I would love the experiment to happen at one point.
Let me say this, Nelson, and I've made my view clear. I've made it. This is my. This will probably be my last thoughts as well. I made it clear. I think there is, unfortunately, a correlation between some of these scriptures we've read and the racism. So I'm not going to take away. I'm not going to change my view there. So I've made that clear. I do believe there's an issue. However, as I made the point also about status as well, I think in a lot of these Arab countries, if you have a status, and it doesn't matter what your skin complexion is in some of these Arab countries, if you have status. When I was in Dubai, I saw darker skinned people than me clearly being treated with respect as Arabs, and they clearly had money too. It was quite obvious that they had money, and they were darker than me. And they were being you could see that they were being treated with, they were walking around with that air of respect. Mm-hmm. And that's why I found that's actually why I did like seeing that. So yeah, so that's why I think status has a lot to do with it. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, by the way. I'm just telling you how it is.
Bro, I just don't want to forget it was just supposed to be a quick question. And I wouldn't judge the entire Islamic world by using Dubai. I don't think that's a good standard. But
that's all I can reference.
Yeah. If you want to fall for that, you can fall for that. And I would love to see more black people actually moving over there and see how quickly they'll come back in less than 2 months.
In Dubai.
Not Dubai. Dubai is a place where you have to have a lot of money and all of that type of stuff. Most people can't actually live in Dubai. People go on holiday. They don't live there because of what it requires. I think just to quickly address everything, because you guys spoke for a long time and I'm just trying to address, and I'm going to be really, really quick. I think I completely disagree. I think in historically Christian countries, you are more likely. Is there going to be racism? Like I said before, racism exists, and you're never going to be able to completely get rid of it. But my point was, racism has been addressed more in historically Christian countries and is not addressed at all in Islamic countries, and that's why it's so rife. And if anyone doubts me, I would actually tell them to go out and move to an Islamic country and live there. There's a reason why people are dying to come to Europe and not dying to immigrate to an Islamic country. And if you're doubting about how racist it is, I mean, there's most of the slave trade happens in Islamic countries. Okay, and it's mostly black people that it happens to.
Libya, for example.
Libya and all of these countries. Such things do not happen in Europe. Okay, you might say yes, this Polish guy is extremely racist and all of that, but there's plenty of black people that would rather live in Europe, in a country like Poland, which I agree with JM. It's racist. I haven't been there. My brother's been there twice, and he said yes, it is racist. And he had a Polish wife as well. But anyways, the point that I'm trying to make is if anyone wants to test it out, they can always move to an Islamic country. And I bet you any money you'll be back to a European country very quickly. Now the passage that I've read, the hadith that I've read, it speaks of offspring. Okay, and this is what I want to highlight. Okay, it says God created Adam when he created him and struck his right shoulder and brought forth his offspring. Last time I checked, offspring is a person's child or children. Okay, so Adam's children was being brought forth because his right shoulder got struck and his left shoulder got struck, and these children that was brought forth, some were black. One, I think the one on the right was black, and the one on the left was, and he struck his left shoulder and brought forth his offspring black. So yes, left shoulder white, and the offspring, which means children of Adam, was sent to hell, and the white ones were sent to heaven. Okay.
That's problematic.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Hassan did not emphasize the term offspring. That's where I thought his analysis was a bit, that's not honest enough. We need to focus on the term offspring. What does the hadith mean when it says offsprings? And like I just defined it, offspring means children. Okay, a person's child or children. All right, that's what it means. So these are human beings being brought forth from Adam, and some of them are black and some of them are white. And the white ones go to heaven and the black ones go to hell. Now, if that is not a an order to be racist against black people, or to look down on black people, or to belittle black people, then I don't know what is. Okay. So when we're talking about this verse specifically, we can see that it sanctions racism. Okay, that's what it does. It permits racism. If I was a Muslim reading this verse, I would feel as if I can treat black people as anything. I can belittle them. I can do whatever I want to them, because guess what? It says here that these people are going to go to hell anyway. That's that's how I would interpret that. That's how any human being would interpret that. Okay, and yes, so I don't buy this idea that people would rather live in the Middle East rather than in a racist. No, I wouldn't say racist, because even Portugal has changed tremendously. Like now compared to what it was, okay, it has changed tremendously, and I think it's because of the of Christian ideas that says God is made, that all human beings are made in the same are made in the image of God. It's because of Jesus Christ. It's because of these ideas. It comes out of that racism became something that was outlawed and was confronted in the West. Has it been done perfectly? Absolutely not. But this idea that you'd rather live in an Islamic country than a historically Christian country is absolute nonsense. Nowhere else in the world has racism been addressed more as a problem, as even a problem. In this Middle Eastern country, it's not even a problem. It's not viewed as an issue. It's not viewed as a problem. It's not viewed as something that we need to fight against. And this. I'm not talking about addressing the issue perfectly. I'm not saying that because we've addressed the issue that racism is going to completely disappear and blah blah. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about where has it been more addressed as an issue, as a problem, as evil, where to the point where we've passed laws against it and so on and so forth. It's in the West. It's in a historically Christian country. This is a fact. No way in Islam does the concept of racism even go to Egypt and see if the concept of racism exists in their head. Do they think in terms of, oh, you know what, racism is evil, racism is bad? They don't think like that. Okay, and plus when you've got verses like this, there's all black people will go to hell and all white people will go to faith. Is there any wonder why they idolize the Arabs, and they've got this caste system almost of the whiter you are, the better you are? Is there any wonder in the blacker you are, the because of verses like this? And I think it's pretty clear that racism inherently comes from Islam itself, and that's the reason why the Islamic countries don't address racism the way the West address racism. Okay, that's the reason why. All right. Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah, so in response to that, first of all, I've just looked at the hadith, and this is one of the problems of going to anti-Islamic sources to find an understanding of Islam. because I noticed Octavio didn't have the hadith in the actual Sahih book. He just found a screenshot from X. The hadith is weak. The hadith is an inauthentic hadith. That's one. Two, let's focus on the verse that refers to Adam as being made from black clay in the Quran, not hadith, but black clay. Now, does that mean that Adam is black and now black is superior to non-black? No.
Sorry, what? Adam is made from black clay.
Anyway, so I'm just going to carry on because I did listen to you, Octavio. I didn't ask you
I
questions.
thought you were asking a question. That's the reason why
It's a rhetorical question. It's a rhetorical question. Now, Octavio goes on to say Islamic countries. He doesn't refer to them as being Middle Eastern countries. And it's quite odd, considering that there are more Muslims in Africa and other parts of the world than there are in the Middle East. So the idea of go to Islam or there's nothing in Islam that is anti-racism is not true. There are many hadiths that are anti-racist. There are many hadiths that are pro-black from a pro-black perspective, meaning that you should not be racist towards black people and such. Many hadiths, but none of them have been. Well, not many of them being quoted here. This and the idea that the West is the only country or only part of the world that's addressing racism. Anybody who has a brief reading of history for the past 200 years or 400 years knows that the West has been extremely racist and has been built upon racism. And it has another 400 to 500 years to go before it even resolves these issues. JM himself has mentioned just up until 2015, the British government was giving reparations to slave owners because they lost, correct me if I'm wrong, JM, they lost their slaves and the government owed them money for their loss of ownership of slaves, right? So the idea that the West is a champion of anti-racism, it's up until when it gets caught, right? That's what. In reference to Octavio's point of Middle Eastern countries are racist and they have racist issues, yes. Yes, 100 times. Yes, 200 times. Yes, there's a lot of issues with racism and tribalism and casteism, not casteism, but tribalism and things like this. Has nothing to do with the hadiths. And any hadith is quoted as for some reason, a weak hadith that's sourced from an anti-Islamic website or anti-Islamic Twitter account. This does not put Christianity or the Christian world, not Christianity, but the Christian world or the so-called Christian world or so-called historically Christian world in a positive light because it has a lot of blood in its hands. So does the quote-unquote Muslim world, because we have a lot of issues ourselves. But the idea that this anti-blackness can be traced back to Jesus, no. Anti-blackness can be traced back to the Prophet Muhammad or Allah in any way, shape, or form, no. No evidence is being presented. It's just conjecture. It's the idea of Christianity is the best because Arabs are racist. It's a very weak argument. It may be true. Arabs maybe as a culturally are racist and have a lot of racist issues, but it has nothing to do with Islam. They have a long way to go to follow the Prophet Muhammad's example. And secondly, finally, I'm still a bit peed off, to be honest with you, that the pro-black Muslim person isn't here. This is not my forte. I'm trying my best here to fight this off, and it's annoying that the endless debates about is Jesus God, is Jesus not God, and blah 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 blah, whatever it is, which is an important topic. But you'd think if you're speaking to people who are of a black background who have issues with the Islamic religion in terms of racism and things like this, please focus on that, clear that up, and then move on to other issues because it's pretty annoying. I'm doing this on
I agree with you on that point. I do agree with you on that point.
Guys,
I'm gonna do my last thought. Do you come back to that, Nelson? I'll do my last thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean, the hadith is not a weak hadith. It's not that's a lie. We can look into the authenticity of the hadith to see if it's sahih enough. And what you usually find is that there is some that think some scholars that think it's weak, and the other ones that think it's it's authentic, and so on and so forth. That's what you will find. So this idea that it's completely it's a false hadith or it's weak hadith, I mean, it's not true at all. And again, it speaks to the fact, and Brother Hassan has mentioned it. He said 100 times, 200 times that the racism there is rife, and it doesn't surprise me that the racism there is rife. It doesn't surprise me that that, for example, in the West, you can say whatever you want to the white man. You can insult him. You can call him whatever names you want. Poland, for example, people would call Poland extremely racist. Poland is shooting down people refugees dying to come over to Poland and live there. How racist can it be? The thing is, what I'm basically saying is just that it's a fact that people would rather live in the West than live in Islamic countries. It's a fact. Even Muslims are dying to come into the West because of the freedoms that the West provides and so on. And the fact that you can address racism, the fact you can talk about racism, the fact that you can, this is just a fact. This is not even something that we should be talking about. This is just a well-known fact. And the fact that the West is historically Christian adds to that fact. So it's I mean, I don't certain things shouldn't even be debatable. it's just like we're debating it for the sake of what? It's like we're not doing any. We need to move the conversation along. In facts, like people would rather live in the West because there's less racism, there's more freedoms in the West. It's just a fact. Then there's somewhere like an Islamic country where racism is rife, where black people, where most of the slavery happens in Islamic countries. And so for you, and when I say slavery, I'm talking about mainly black slaves. So it's like, come on, man. Like, I don't even know why we even, having a debate on this. This is not even debatable. But yeah, I would just say that. Give your last thoughts, JM.
Yeah. So as I said, I think it was quite interesting discussion, and I'll maintain that I agree with Nelson actually in regards to when you look at the racism that is quite that many black Muslims complain about in Arab countries. I do believe there's a correlation between some of these scriptures verses that we discussed and that behavior. I think I take Hassan's point that pre-Islam there was this racism that was rife in the Arab Peninsula. It's anti-black racism, which is also which is another topic we could discuss. I guess why that happened, why that even existed, which is interesting. But post-Islam, the fact that it didn't change is quite telling to me. So you'd expect to be a slight change, but it hasn't changed at all. But then at the same time, I do take Hassan's argument that many Christian countries have a history of racism, which it happens today. I do again think that we can't compare the progress that's happened in the UK and in America, who have very unique histories with regards to interacting with black people than other European countries. We shouldn't extrapolate some of those progresses to Europe. I think that's not good to do. I don't agree with that. I think in some parts of Europe, the racism will be worse in some Arab countries, if I'm honest. Because there's in some of these Arab countries where there's racism, you'll also find people with dark skin in prominent positions. But you won't find that in some of these European countries. So that's why I kind of slightly pushed back on that point. But yeah, it was a good discussion. I think I learned a bit, and yeah.
My last thoughts. Just to respond quickly to Jay, a lot of these Eastern European countries that are characterized as racist. Brother James said he's never been to one of these countries, so I'm assuming that he's heard that these places are racist, so he doesn't actually know because he wouldn't even go there. A lot of it, I think, is to do with lack of immigration, lack of interaction, and I don't think it's necessarily racist. It's just that there hasn't been enough black people interacting with them. I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist, but my argument primarily was that racism is more addressed in the West, and we have laws against racism in the West than anywhere else in any Muslim than in the Muslim world. That was my point. It's addressed in the West, and it's due to Christianity. It's due to Christianity. It's due to the example of Jesus Christ, the example of the apostles, and so on and so forth, and what came down from that. That's what I would say in regards to that. A lot of people want to say these Eastern European countries are racist, but they haven't been there. They don't know what it's like to live there. So it's good to find out first. But in Islamic countries, we know that most of the slave trade happens there. Most of the racism is rife there, and so on and so forth. This is a well-known fact. I would also say, and it's because of these verses, because of these. It's because of Islam. It's because of the religion itself. The religion teaches racism. The religion teaches that white is better and black will go to hell. This is just a fact. This is why Brother Hassan, for example, he's told me that the problem that black guys have in terms of even here in the West have in terms of like marrying, let's say, an Arab woman or whatever, Arab girl, the problems that they have in there, because the family just will not accept it at all. And there's honor killings. I myself, they even have a concept in Islam called honor killings. And I have I used to live in Acton. There was a guy that tried to kill himself, that they killed his daughter because he found out that his daughter was dating a black guy. I mean, the stories, the amount of stories of Muslim parents taking the law into their own hands and killing their own offspring because a black man touched their daughter, or because they married. I mean, we all know these stories. Okay, so whereas in the West now, a white parent probably like, oh, it's a black guy. Oh, that's great. That's amazing. But even today in 2025, trust me, try and marry one of these Muslim girls and see what happens. I myself, I've witnessed that. A Muslim girl that I was dating, and she was beaten because guess what? She was going out with a black guy. So, I mean, I ain't trying to hear none of this. Oh, it's the Westerns, you also be racist. Racism exists everywhere. That's not the point. The point is someone's getting triggered in the background. Too many fact overload. The truth is, everyone knows where it's best to live at. They're trying to get over here. No one's trying to go over to the Islamic countries because they know how it is down there. Go ahead.
Go ahead, who?
Your last thoughts, bro.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, so in terms of racism, you just go to Eastern Europe and you've only heard about racism. You just go there and you see it for yourself and you find out. But the Muslim countries, Arab countries, they're very racist, and we all know. Okay, fine. Before you go to Eastern Europe, as any black person living in the UK listening to this, just Google neo-Nazi, and you'll find neo-Nazis in Poland, neo-Nazis in Hungary, neo-Nazis in Ukraine, even to the point where people were trying to flee Ukraine because of the Russian war. They were told, no, you're black. You can walk through the war zone and survive your own way. But the white Ukrainians, they'll get escorted service, they'll get a flight out. So let's not pretend that Europe, these traditionally Christian countries, Christian majority countries, are nothing but evil and abhorrent and viciously racist. Don't let the Catholic lies pull wool over your eyes. These are nothing but dishonest lies that are being trying to present these morally backward societies in terms of racism as being nothing other than that. Right, that's one. Two, honor killings in Islam, there's no such thing. This is just a lie. If there's any proof, please put it in the chat. Please let me know where Islam allows you to kill somebody because they offended you in any way, shape, or form, or they hurt your feelings, or somebody's dated somebody else. This is a tradition practiced specifically in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and it has nothing to do with Islam. And it's even the first UK charity set up to fight honor killings, meaning women being murdered because they've humiliated the family in any way, shape, or form, was set up by a Sikh woman because her life was threatened because she was dating somebody her father didn't approve of, and her father tried to kill her. It's a South Asian cultural problem. Not to not to tar that to smear the South Asian community in that way, but has nothing to do with Islam, to the point where Sikhs are the ones setting up these organizations to protect their own community from this abhorrent cultural practice. That's one. The West has been nothing but racist right up until not so long ago. And it has to now change its ways because it relies and has to negotiate with developing nations that are black and brown. They are altering their racial bias in an effort to stay afloat. The UK is anti-racism and promoted anti-racism because it can't just ignore the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who came to this country from the Caribbean and from India in the 1960s and the 1970s. They needed them, so they now need to change their ways. They're not voluntarily doing it, it's because they have to. They survive off black and brown labor, minerals, trade, whatever it is. The world has changed. The British Empire has fallen because of World War II and other factors. Now, black and brown people have to be recognized as human beings by those former colonial powers. That's it. It's not that their Christian moral values are being upheld. And no. That just goes out the window. Not a lot of what's done today in the past couple of 100 years or so by the West has anything to do with Jesus or Christianity. It's just money and power and influence and dominance. Thirdly, or finally, misrepresenting Islam through using da'if hadith that scholars do not support, ignoring certain other anti-racism factors of the deen of Islam, ignoring the tens of millions of Black African, Afro-Caribbean, how can I say, brown, Asian people who are Muslim, and using the pitfalls of cultural baggage that is a part of the Middle East as a representative of Islam, doesn't make Christianity look any better. Doesn't make the Christian argument sound any more solid. It doesn't work. It's just cheap. I will be obviously commenting on this debate, or this discussion, actually, it's not even a debate, and posting various misinformation and correcting misinformation that's been presented here today, that Islam is racist and Christianity is the light bearer of all good. And hopefully, any Muslims listening to this who consider themselves to be pro-Black can see that race, how can I say, race is not a binding factor. If somebody doesn't like your religion, and they see your religion as being barbaric, it doesn't matter if you're the same race as them. They will still attack it. Your love of racial identity, he's Black, I'm Black, although I'm Muslim and he's Christian, and we could be best buddies together, doesn't work. Defend the deen using the truth, and do not allow people to misrepresent Islam, as they're doing now.
Okay, appreciate that. That was the last thoughts, guys. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for Hassan. Thank you for Jam. Thank you for you. This is an important topic. Is Islam racist? And this is what we do in the Solution Podcast. We confront difficult topics. We talk about it. So, guys, thank you very much. And we're going to call it a night. And thanks for everyone that was watching. Shout outs to you. So, yes, peace.
Amazing.